You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
It's time to head south with the Fantha From Down Under. Here's your host, Adam O'Brien.
G'day, mate, how you going? This here is the Fantha From Down Under. That's right, yours truly, Adam O'Brien, otherwise known as the Mullet. That is the legal Mullet. Here, back on Fantha Tracks Radio, folks. Thanks to, of course, the great people at Fantha Tracks. They've asked us back, folks, so here we are with episode number 58. Welcome back, Mullet. And we're going to get into some good old-fashioned Star Wars. That's right, we're going to be chatting some good old-fashioned Star Wars here on the show tonight.
And now it's time for the news, live from Quinlan's Cantina on the Gold Coast of Australia, with the Fantha From Down Under.
All right, folks, let's get cracking, chatting Star Wars here. What's the state of Star Wars? Well, there's a lot happening, isn't there? You know, for us older fans that grew up in the 80s and grew up, of course, at a classic original trilogy, never would have thought we'd have such a huge franchise sitting in front of us, you know? As we grew up checking out can of toys, watching, of course, the movies on TV, VHS, Betamax. Betamax was where we was at, folks. We really enjoyed Betamax back in the day. It was kind of like Blu-ray is to HD DVD, but of course, one grew out of the other, and of course, one became the better form of where we would get our hard entertainment at home. That's right. And of course, it's great because a lot of the times we don't get to see things so much at cinemas and stuff like that these days. At that time in the 80s, and you're seeing it in such a small little square box, and you know, you're seeing only some parts of it. So it's great that George had the foresight to re-release the films many years later as he was tinkering, because he's a great tinkerer, old George. He's still tinkering now, isn't he? And you know what? It's great because we got to see the special editions, and you know, they are what they are. Although I would like to see George back then have, you know, the foresight to also show the theatrical editions out there. I mean, it's only more money, George. You know, it's only a bit more coin. But of course, he's the artist that wanted his product a certain way, and he got it. And they are what they are, and they're cleaned up, and they look good on the screen at the time, and it was fantastic and all that. And of course, we had the expanded universe go off, and really, I think that's where I found my fandom, was in that time period, you know, because there was just so much happening. We had so much stuff. I mean, I've got a mate over in Edinburgh that's always telling me about, you know, the same thing he was doing with, of course, was collecting the Hasbro toys after, obviously, Kenner. And, you know, you get all that happening at the same time. I've got a pal over in the UK, because we have Fantha Tracks, he's over there, folks, that's right. And even he has said the same. A lot of it was the collecting that got him, you know, into continuing his fandom after Return of the Jedi. For me, it was a bit of everything. I wasn't a fan that, you know, would just go straight out and go, right, I'm going to go and collect this. I'm going to go and collect that or this. It was actually a chance thing that, you know, I'd gone through like 84, whatever it was, till Transformers came along and pretty much stole me away from the Star Wars fandom for a little while in these dark ages of what it was. And we really got a fun time where, you know, we're trying other stuff, we're checking out different things. We had Last Starfighter come out, we had more Star Trek headed our way, all these other things. And sort of always gave us something different outside of Star Wars to check out, which is always good as well. And it's good to have a versatile fandom. But, of course, out in 1990, God, what was it now, folks? It was fairly early. But when the Thrawn books came out, of course, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising and The Last Command, you know, these were really a kickstarter of a new type of fandom. And what's great is that the new Legends line, or as I like to say, it's a legacy line, really. But to me, folks, it is the expanded universe. Always will be. You can retitle it all you want. I will say this. In 1991, these books came out, and they delivered. Boy, did they deliver. And it's still such a fantastic thing to go and reread those. Every year I read that trilogy. That's the one Star Wars trilogy, like Dune and like also Lord of the Rings, I read once a year because they're damn good books, folks. Damn good. Extremely well written. if you want to get close to the original trilogy, that's as good as you're going to get. Because, things evolve and change, and obviously we've had a lot of different Star Wars since, for good or for worse, or whatever you want. There's a bit of Star Wars out there for you. What for me, though, was great about these ones is it was, lightning in a bottle again. Timothy Zahn just was able to deliver exactly what he said he would, and he set out and did it. And it's great, but you can get the new edition that's out with the Legends line. Just slightly bigger paperback, I've got to say, than the ones that we used to get, the little Bantam ones. I still love those, by the way, got to say. And of course, that was hot on the heels. We had Kevin J. Anderson's work as well, Mos Eisley Cantina and the Bounty Hunter books, and obviously then we had, the Jedi Academy series. We also had the Han Solo books, all that sort of stuff. I mean, we even had the old Brian Daley ones, and obviously the Lando books, which, folks, we will cover here. So what I'm actually going to be doing is something that we set out to do back in the early 50s of this podcast, is to look at those books. And yes, definitely going to be looking at them, and we're going to be looking at them a little bit deeper. And that's, of course, the Brian Daley novels, and, of course, the Lando Calrissian series as well, because they're great actual books. They're great adventures. Takes you away from the standard Star Wars universe that because they weren't allowed to use the characters, folks, basically. That's what it comes down to. And Brian did an amazing job with his books. So, they're really rip-roaring fun reads. And then, of course, L. Neil Smith wrote the Mind Harper Shrew, the Flame Wind of Ossian, and, of course, the Star Caver Thrombocker, which is great. These new editions have great little introductions by Pablo Hidalgo, who's pretty much the man in the know when it comes to where things sit in timelines and all that sort of stuff. Although I know some fans out there, folks, you know it well, because you read these damn books too. That's right, me, I do. I have a vague recollection of most, but it's things like the essential guides to warfare and stuff like that that really help keep us, our minds on where things are. Some great Star Wars books out there for you to get, folks. So obviously we, grew up through that. We've had, obviously, since then, prequel trilogy, which, a lot of people like to bag, but you know what? I love the prequel trilogy. Always did. I love it. It's fantastic. Phantom Menace is, like a fine wine. You can literally put that on now, and it's hard to believe how long it's been since that movie came out. But I remember seeing the 3D edition not too long ago at the cinema here in Australia, and mate, I tell you what, it did it for me. It's still the best when it comes to lightsaber action. It's even better than Revenge of the Sith, folks, I personally think. Ewan McGregor and Ray Park, Kenobi versus Darth Maul is still the best lightsaber battle in the series. They haven't topped it. They still haven't. It's literally Jedi at their peak of training, head to head. Jedi versus Sith. You can't get better. I just hate to say it. Obviously, since then, we've had the Clone Wars in the two different versions. The Genndy series is actually very close to my heart. I was at graphic design college at the time, and when that came out, that was something we just kept rewatching. I mean, it was only whatever it was. It was 30-odd minutes, maybe, or something like that at the time. I think it's 60 minutes collectively. But we were sitting in between, recess periods between classes, and while our Macs are sitting there rendering these huge, huge programs that we're running of different stuff. What's great about it is those renderings were taking so long that we would just sit there watching on the HD TV at the time, all these reruns of the Genndy Clone Wars. And I mean, I loved it. I mean, you got everything from the Clone Wars plus all these additional characters, which are expanded universe, folks. That's right. And of course, the introduction of one Kenobi, General Grievous. Yes, he's a great character in its own too. And Scooby-Doo, apparently. But we also saw some of what we were going to see in Revenge of the Sith in that period. Due to, obviously, the Genndy series, it was a lot of fun. I loved it. I love that Samurai Jack style, particularly that last season of Samurai Jack, which is pretty much the end of the series, which he put together is, a little bit more adult than you would expect from Samurai Jack. And it's very Kurosawa. Very Kurosawa.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Then, of course, George being George, he decided, you know what, mate? I've got an idea. Let's do a CGI Thunderbirds version of Clone Wars, and they'll just forget about that Gendy stuff. I'm sure, you'll never hear about Gendy stuff again. And it was kind of like a complete retcon, which is something we get used to with Star Wars over the years. But as fans, we all remember all Star Wars. And you know what? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is we got more Star Wars. So Clone Wars came out, and, there's interesting that, this series, which went on for so many seasons, we got to know some great characters, some amazing voice actors over the years too, playing all these amazing characters, And at first, I'm going to say I didn't really like the design, the style they were going for with this whole super marination style of CGI. I'm kind of like, why do a super marination style within CGI if you could just do realistic human beings in there, Which is something maybe they've looked at years later and changed, considering the newer material that they've done over the years. But what's interesting to me also is the fact that series gave us one of the best writer-director creators in the series, and if anything, second only to, of course, GL himself. And that is, of course, Dave Filoni. Hats off to the master, a man who is also a Robotech fan at heart like myself, grew up with the amazing series, and that's a series with a great voice cast in itself as well. Very much suited to the mold of making these episodic entertainment of the Clone Wars. And it was a fantastic series. I absolutely enjoyed it, folks. I loved it. And of course, with that, we didn't realise what George was doing also behind the scenes, which was getting ready to relinquish said crown and send it to, obviously, a new person to head it, and also sell the company to one of the biggest corporations in the world, if not the biggest corporation in the world. That is, of course, Disney. So, we never thought there would be another movie after, of course, the likes of Revenge of the Sith being the last one was always what was touted to us, But, of course, that changed when, of course, we got the news that, there was going to be a whole new company running Star Wars. George would bow out. Kathleen Kennedy would take over creative control, and as director of the company would then lead it into this new echelon of the amazing stuff that we've had. Everything, of course, since The Force Awakens. And, of course, Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, which took over from, obviously, the events in Clone Wars. We've had Clone Wars again. We've had Star Wars Bad Batch. Of course, the animated series has just pretty much rolled from there. And along with that, we've had some great movies, obviously, too. There's also been some controversial ones with certain groups of fandom as well. And case in point being, at the end of the day, there's always going to be things you like and things you don't like. But moving through that, you got more Star Wars. This is something none of us could have predicted back all that time ago in, the early 80s, 82, 83, at its height, that we'd ever get, the like of 9 movies. The likes of, obviously, wrapping out with Last Jedi and, of course, The Rise of Skywalker. This trilogy that's really, at its heart, should have been, one creative mind doing it. That's really what it comes down to. You got JJ and, of course, Rian Johnson. If it could be in some meeting of the minds, compromise from both sides, you would have had a trilogy, I think, that would be one that gels a hell of a lot better. And without the retcons, and also a cohesive story. They are what they are at the end of the day. They're all beautiful movies by themselves, I personally think. They're shot beautifully. Battle of Crate is absolutely gorgeous. There's scenes in Last Jedi which, stand better than a lot of science fiction to this day. Same with Rise of Skywalker, and, of course, the same with, The Force Awakens. And, however, I will say this. JJ, I think, is better suited to the Star Trek universe. He rebooted that extremely well into an alternate timeline, and it worked. It worked with a kind of Star Wars rock and roll style nature. It was really solid. It worked to the point where we got something new out of it, but we also had some of the old as well. And it really had that sense of adventure. And I think, sometimes we just miss all that, which is just crazy.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Now it's time to go down to the pub here with the Fantha From Down Under. Let's go grab a pint.
So, moving on from what we were talking about there, we also got a sense of some bigger pieces of the pie when it came to a film that we didn't realise was going to be such a big hit, and that's, of course, Rogue One. Gareth Edwards directed this amazing film, which really is a Star Wars Part 2, if you like. Or in this case, a Part 1. Star Wars would be Rogue 2, this is Rogue 1. Rogue One is, of course, about the rebels that go and get the plans, of course, for the Death Star and find the weakness in it so that Luke and his team can destroy it. And destroy it they do. It's a great one. We get some amazing talent. One of them being, of course, Donnie Yen, of course, and Forrest Whitaker coming in to play his character from the Clone Wars as well. And, of course, we got Bor Gullet, which I think should be still on T-shirts everywhere, folks. You know, lies, deceptions, Bor Gullet. And, of course, we got Vader. I mean, this is the most crowd-pleasing Star Wars film that Disney's put out still to this day. It really is. It is such a rip-roaring, amazing film. And, of course, the ending of it is, bringing back all the X-Wing Rogue Squadron cronies, of course. All the ones you'd remember from the end of Star Wars A New Hope. So it's great to see. Great that we're getting a touch of that here when it comes to the future of Star Wars. With that, we also got, of course, the amazing Ron Howard coming back into working for Lucasfilm and taking over the reins from directors that left the project and did, of course, Solo. And hey, folks, I love that film. That is a great flick. You get, I think, a lot of flack for that film. You know, it came out just after Last Jedi, and it was probably way too close to Last Jedi to really get the kind of business it deserved. You know, it's a better film than people give it credit for. And of course, it's the story of Han Solo, for crying out loud, folks. And I do believe Aaron Ehrenreich did a damn good job. You know, you could do all the wizardry you want to change him out of that, which people have done on Photoshop and particularly on YouTube. You can see Harrison Ford's face swapped onto his and all that sort of jazz. But, you know, this is a young, more naive Han Solo. Of course, we get also the amazing, Lando being younger in this, and he owns the Falcon in this one, which is great. I've always enjoyed that, and I think that's a film which, at its heart feels more like a TV episode, probably, just a big budget one. And it's just, it's amazing to see that that film finally got, the light of day. I think that's something that George wouldn't have done, if not, for a long while, because he's very beloved of those characters. Even Yoda, for example, he's not somebody that would show the early years of Yoda, at least not the mega early years and the race of what Yoda is. Perhaps we are seeing that, and of course the extended adventures of where we're getting into now between Return of the Jedi and of course The Force Awakens with the Mandalorian series, and of course Boba Fett as well, the Book of Boba Fett smashing down doors now. And I'm going to be honest, folks, I haven't seen it yet. I stopped my Disney Plus subscription quite a while back after the second season of Mando had finished. I've got everything that's on there on Blu-ray already, so there was no point me continuing my subscription at the time. But after I've finished watching some other stuff, I'm definitely going to get in and check out. I'm not somebody that likes to watch things while the hype is big, because a lot of the time that you're getting spoiled, and that's not fun, particularly the different time periods everyone's in, whether it's the UK, here, America, wherever you are in the world, doesn't matter. But people get movies spoiled for them, and that's just bullish behaviour. And there's a lot of magazines and a lot of websites out there that just do it anyway. And yes, I could name names here on the podcast. You know who you are out there. You just got to hold off on them spoilers. Let people have a chance to watch things, Don't just go, it's a week's up, so yeah, now we can spoil. No, you can't. All right? And it's just freaking annoying and stupid, and stop. Yeah? So that's where we're at. We've got all this new stuff coming. We've got obviously more TV shows announced. Some cancelled, some put on the back burner. We've got Orion Johnson's sequel trilogy, which don't know what's happening with. Again, something that's sitting on the shelf. We've got a Rogue Squadron movie that's apparently on the shelf now as well. I just want Taika Waititi to get his movie happening, because if there's somebody that could do a fun Star Wars movie, or at least get something rolling, it's Taika. He really has made the best Marvel movie in years, which of course was Ragnarok. Yes, Ragnarok is a better film than any of those Infinity War and Endgame. Folks, I am not a fan of those films. Ragnarok, I certainly am. That's a great one. The Spider-Man films were fun, but those bigger ones, I get that they were coming together for, the idea of making this huge magnum opus, but I just find them tedious, don't you? Anyway, that's the state of Star Wars.
Thanks for listening to the Fantha From Down Under. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit FanthaTracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@FanthaTracks.com. You can also find me over at Fandom Podcast Network, where I host The Lethal Mullet, Making Tracks with Mark Newbold, and Mullet and Kilt with Greg Robertson. That's right, Darth Elvis. And you can find me on Twitter at The Lethal Mullet. You can comment, like, share any of our social media feeds at Fantha Tracks. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, and Mark Daniel and of course Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember to tune in to our Fantha Tracks news show, Good Morning Tatooine, live Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. UK, 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. This is Star Wars news in a single file. May the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.